You wake before dawn. The air inside Kensington Palace is colder than it should be, a damp, breathless cold that clings to the velvet curtains and creeps beneath the doors. Somewhere beyond the walls, the city of London still sleeps under a shroud of mist. The river exhales its silver breath, and the faint toll of St. Mary Abbot's bell drifts through the fog. You are one of the quiet ones, a palace attendant, invisible, awake when the world is not. You move through corridors lined with portraits that seem to watch you pass. The wax in the sconces has burned low. Each flame wavers, struggling against the chill. Behind the thick oak door at the end of the passage, King George II is stirring, 76 years old, nearly blind in one eye, deaf in both ears, yet still bound to the discipline of his youth. Every morning, precisely at 6, he rises, not because he must rule, but because habit commands him. Habit is the last kingdom he can control. The servants whisper that he sleeps little, haunted by dreams of the battlefield. They say he can still feel the recoil of cannon, still see the smoke of Dettingen. That strange victory of 1743 when he became the last British monarch to lead his troops in person. He was 60 then, furious and fearless, shouting orders in German across the din of musket fire. Those days are gone, yet he clings to them as a drowning man to driftwood. Now his body betrays him in ways he refuses to acknowledge. His pulse races without warning. His breath shortens when he climbs the small stair to his closet. The physicians have spoken in guarded tones, an aneurysm. They called it a swelling in the great artery of the heart. But the king will hear none of it. I will not die in bed. He once said, I shall die standing. The irony is that he will die sitting. You push open the chamber door just enough to peer inside. The royal apartments are simple but ordered. A 4-poster bed, a writing desk littered with correspondence, and beyond, a narrow door leading to the privy chamber, the small, private room few ever see. It is not like the rest of the palace. The air there smells faintly of rosewater and wax polish, but beneath it lingers another scent, something metallic, something human. The king's valet has just brought in a tray, a cup of thick chocolate. Steaming in the candlelight, the king sits upright on the bed, the white curls of his wig slightly askew, his thin hands trembling as he lifts the cup. His fingers are spotted, his knuckles swollen from gout. The chocolate leaves a brown stain on the rim, like a mark of earth. Leave me, he says. His voice is harsh, the German accent undimmed by decades in England. The servants bow and retreat, closing the door softly. Only you remain in the corridor, listening to the soft scrape of his slippers against the floor as he begins his routine. Through the half-open door you glimpse him moving slowly toward the inner room. Robe trailing, candle flickering, he pauses once, perhaps dizzy, one hand gripping the wall. Then he disappears beyond the frame. The door closes. Minutes pass. The palace remains half asleep. Somewhere below, the maids stoke the kitchen fires. The smell of coal and bread rises faintly through the vents. The great clock in the gallery ticks its steady rhythm, the same rhythm. You think, that beats inside every living chest. You pour water into a basin, preparing for the king's wash. When it happens, a sound, dull, heavy, final. Not the crash of furniture, not the thud of a dropped object. Something softer, flesh striking marble. Then silence. You freeze, the jug in your hand trembling. The tick of the clock continues. Indifferent, you wait for the sound of the king's voice, for the impatient shout that usually follows when a servant hesitates too long. But none comes. You set the jug down and listen. Still nothing. The candlelight along the corridor flickers as if disturbed by a breath. You move toward the door, your steps muffled by carpet. You knock once, no answer. Again, still nothing. The third knock is met only by the faint hiss of the candle beside you. When you push the door open, the smell reaches you first, a sudden, acrid tang of sweat and wax and something darker. The room is dim. The candle has burned low, its flame trembling above a pool of wax. The king lies on the floor beside the commode, his robe twisted, one slipper fallen away. His face is pale, eyes half open, mouth slack. For a moment you cannot move. The world has stopped. The clock outside ticks on, counting seconds that no longer belong to him. You kneel, calling for help, your voice breaking the stillness. Footsteps thunder down the hall, doors open. Voices cry out. The chamberlain arrives first, then the physician, Dr. Frank Nichols, summoned from his breakfast table. He bends over the king, fingers searching for a pulse. He finds none. The physician lifts an eyelid, the pupil is fixed. He places his ear against the chest, listening. What he hears is not silence, but something heavier, the absence of a beat that should still be there. He whispers to the chamberlain, "It is done." They carry him to the bed, laying the small, shrunken body upon white linen. The king's robe is still damp with perspiration. Someone closes his mouth, straightens his wig, folds his hands. Outside, the first carriages begin to roll through the city streets, unaware that a reign has ended. You step back, your hands shaking. The physician turns to you and says quietly, "Go, fetch my instruments." His Majesty's heart has betrayed him. Blank, underscore, blank. If this moment chills you, stay. Because this is not the story of grandeur or glory. It is the story of what remains when all grandeur has gone. This is how kings end, not with trumpets, not with crowns, but with the soft echo of a heartbeat fading in a cold room. Stay, if you wish to witness. Stay, not to glorify death, but to understand life as it really is, fragile, unadorned, quietly human. The morning before his death begins like any other. A gray light seeps through the curtains, dissolving the last of the night. The palace breathes in rhythm with its aging master, floorboards creak. Pipes murmur, and the faint crackle of the kitchen hearth rises from below. You follow the same path you have walked for years, from the servants' wing to the royal apartments. Your shoes whisper over woven rugs imported from Saxony, each step a repetition of duty. In this house, routine is religion. Inside the king's chamber, the air smells of lavender water, snuff, and paper, an old man's trinity. On the escritoire, piles of correspondence lean against a small portrait of Queen Caroline. His wife long gone, the edges of her miniature have darkened with age, but her gaze remains steady, calm, forgiving. The king often speaks to it in the early hours, believing no one can hear. He rises before the servants enter, a habit carried from youth when dawn meant the trumpet of the camp and the scent of wet earth. His legs tremble now when he stands, yet he insists on dressing himself. You watch quietly as he reaches for his robe, the silk whispering like breath. Each movement is deliberate, defiant. 76, he mutters, more to the window than to you. And still no rest. Outside, fog curls over the gardens. Somewhere a raven croaks, its echo settles in the cold air. You fetch the cup of thick chocolate from the tray. The king drinks slowly, his hands shaking, leaving brown rings on the saucer. The physician has warned against it. The richness strains the heart, but the king ignores him. A king must not surrender to broth. He once said, "Broth is for the dying." When he finishes, he sets the cup down with a small clatter that sounds louder than it should. The tremor in his fingers does not stop. Blank, underscore, blank. He moves toward the tall mirror beside the bed. The glass is mottled, old mercury streaking across its surface like frozen smoke. He stares at his reflection, back bent, eyes milky, the proud jaw slackened by time. Once, that face commanded regiments. Once, it terrified ministers and amused mistresses. Now it looks almost kind, softened by the exhaustion that power brings. You adjust the candle behind him, and for a moment the reflection splits, two Georges overlapping, the young and the old, soldier and ghost. He turns suddenly. Has the post arrived? Not yet, Your Majesty. He nods. Though he hasn't heard you, deafness has become his final solitude. In his silence, He sees more than most who speak. He walks to the desk and opens a small box containing medals tarnished with years. He lifts one, Dettingen, 1743. Its ribbon frayed but the metal still bright. He smiles faintly. They cheered then, he murmurs. They always cheer when others die. His words drift into the room like dust. You realize that the king lives surrounded by ghosts, his wife, his generals, even his own youth. Each morning he summons them through ritual, as if repetition could keep time from moving forward. The chocolate, the robe, the mirror, the box, small anchors against the flood of forgetting. Blank, underscore, blank. The palace clock strikes 6:30. Its chime runs through the corridors like a warning. He glances toward the inner door, the privy closet. A small, gilded handle gleams in the light. Behind it lies the only space where the king is ever alone. No courtiers, no scribes, no witnesses, only silence. He straightens, gathering the last threads of dignity about him. I shall walk there myself, he says. You bow. Yes, your majesty. He shuffles toward the door, one hand grazing the wall for balance. The candle flame bends in his wake, pulling the shadows along. Each step seems heavier than the last. You notice his breathing grow shallow, the fabric of his robe rising and falling too quickly. He pauses halfway, hand pressed to his chest as though adjusting his heart. Then he waves you away. Go. You obey, retreating to the threshold. He disappears inside, the door closing with a click that sounds final. Blank, underscore, blank. You wait in the corridor, listening to the faint creak of the chair within. Nothing unusual. He will be a few minutes. As always, you glance toward the window. Dawn has thinned the fog. Pale light spills across the garden statues, giving them the color of bone. From below comes the rhythm of daily life restarting, the shuffle of boots, the metallic rattle of pails, the murmur of the kitchen maids. Everything ordinary, perfectly ordinary. And then, a sound breaks the pattern. A single, dull thud. You turn sharply. Silence follows, deep and complete. The clock ticks once, twice, before continuing as though nothing happened. Majesty? You call, softly. No answer. You knock, once, twice. The third time your knuckles meet wood. The echo feels wrong, too hollow. You push the door open. Blank, underscore, blank. The smell greets you first, wax, sweat, and something metallic underneath. The candlelight trembles in the draft. The king lies on the floor beside the commode, body twisted, eyes half open. His skin has already lost its color. It glows a strange gray beneath the thin film of sweat. The robe clings to him, soaked. One slipper lies overturned, its sole pointing upward like a small white flag. You drop to your knees, calling for help. The sound tears the silence apart. Footsteps thunder down the corridor. Guards, valets, the chamberlain. What happened? Someone shouts. You can only shake your head. They lift him gently, laying him flat. A thin trail of blood runs from the corner of his mouth to his chin. His chest does not rise. A servant is sent for Dr. Frank Nichols. The others stand frozen, caught between protocol and panic. When the physician arrives, he kneels beside the king, fingers pressing the cold neck. He waits, then looks up. He is gone. Gone? The chamberlain whispers. Nichols nods. The heart, I think. It burst. The words hang in the air, simple and devastating. Blank, underscore, blank. The physician instructs you to fetch warm water and linen. Together you wipe the body clean, removing the traces of what had happened. The marble beneath the commode bears a faint stain, a shadow that will never truly wash away. Nichols examines the chest with professional calm. I have warned him, he murmurs. For months, the aneurysm could not hold. A vessel torn, death instantaneous. You do not answer. You can hear only the ticking of the clock in the gallery outside. Louder now, each beat mocking the still heart before you. Nichols covers the body with a sheet. Close the door, he says. No one enters until I have written my report. You obey. As you turn the key, the sound of the lock seems to seal more than just the room. It seals an era. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Outside, the palace continues its morning duties. Unaware, horses are being readied. The kitchens prepare breakfast for guests who will never arrive. Only the crows in the garden seem to sense the shift. They gather on the stone balustrade, cawing in harsh chorus. In another hour, the first ministers will be informed. By midday, the flag above St. James's will be lowered to half-mast. And by nightfall, London will whisper that the king died suddenly, though no one will yet know how. But you were there when the sound broke the silence. You saw the stillness that followed. You smelled the faint sweetness of death settling over the marble floor. Blank. Underscore. Blank. When they carry him to the bed, the sheet covering his face, you follow behind, holding the candle. The flame bends and flutters, throwing his shadow against the wall, one last parade of the king through his own corridor. They lay him down. The body looks small now, as if the crown had once inflated it and death has let the air escape. Nichols signs the paper confirming time and cause, a rupture of the aorta, producing instant death. No one speaks. Even the servants who disliked him stand in silence. In the presence of death, resentment shrinks. Outside, the sun has fully risen, though it brings no warmth. The fog over the gardens has turned to rain. Drops slide down the windows like slow tears. You find yourself staring at the closed door of the privy. The candlelight glints on its brass handle. For the rest of your life, you will never pass that door without hearing, in memory, the quiet thud that changed everything. The king's heart has stopped, and yet the palace continues to breathe. And that, you realize, is the truest measure of mortality. That even the death of a king cannot halt the mourning. The corridors fill with the echo of hurried feet. Doors open, fabric rustles, and voices that never dared to rise above a whisper now tremble through the palace. The news moves faster than breath itself. The king has fallen. You stand back as the chamberlain arrives. Face pale, powdered wig slightly askew from haste. He stares at the body on the bed. Disbelief fighting protocol. Send for Dr. Nichols, he orders, and bring the chaplain. Outside the windows, the rain thickens. Drops strike the glass like fingers tapping to be let in. You light another candle, though the air already smells of tallow and damp wool. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Dr. Frank Nichols enters moments later, still in his morning coat, spectacles fogged from the rain. He is small, meticulous, with the look of a man who trusts reason more than prayer. The chamberlain steps aside as the doctor bends over the king, pulling the sheet back to the shoulders. The king's skin has turned the color of candle wax. A faint line of dried blood marks the corner of his lips. His chest lies unnaturally still, the thin ribs rising like collapsed arches. Nichols presses 2 fingers to the neck, then to the wrist. Nothing. He places his ear to the sternum and listens. After a long silence he exhales, fogging the mirror of his own glasses. It is over, he says softly, sudden, violent within. The chamberlain bows his head. We must be certain. Nichols nods once. Then we shall see. Blank. Underscore. Blank. You help carry the body to the adjoining room. The king's limbs are heavy, yet soft, as though all tension has dissolved. When you lay him upon the table, the candlelight turns the white linen beneath him crimson where it touches the cooling skin. Nichols opens a small leather case. Inside are instruments of precision, scalpels, forceps, and shears arranged like surgical prayers. He rolls up his sleeves, eyes steady, voice calm. Fetch warm water, and towels. The servants hesitate. An autopsy is not meant for royal eyes. But duty overrides disgust. You bring the basin, the water steaming faintly. The doctor begins with a single, decisive cut. The sound is soft, almost tender, the parting of skin rather than flesh. A faint hiss escapes as trapped air leaves the cavity. The scent that follows is unmistakable, metallic, warm, edged with sweetness. Nichols peers inside, speaking more to his notes than to anyone present. The pericardium, distended. There, above the right ventricle, see it? A tear, the aorta ruptured near its root. The chamberlain swallows hard. What does it mean? It means his heart burst. The doctor replies. Instantly, he was dead before he touched the floor. The words settle over the room like dust. You find yourself staring at the open chest, at the pale lattice of ribs glistening under the candlelight. There is no majesty here, only anatomy. The body that once held the weight of empire is now a map of failure. Nichols removes the heart, holding it briefly in both hands. It is larger than it should be. Swollen, heavy with clotted blood, he places it into a silver basin lined with linen. The metallic echo of the basin rings like a church bell cut short. He writes quickly in his journal, rupture of the aorta near the semilunar valves. The pericardium contained near 1 pint of coagulated blood, the heart exceedingly large and flaccid. He pauses, wipes his quill, and adds, almost to himself, the seat of life undone by its own pulse. Blank, underscore, blank. Outside the door, servants wait in uneasy silence. No one dares speak of what they smell, the faint sweetness of iron. The sharper tang of alcohol Nichols uses to cleanse his instruments. You open a window, letting the cold air pour in. Rain spatters across the sill, mingling with the scent of wax and death. Nichols finishes his notes and covers the incision with fresh cloth. Close the shutters, he says quietly. No one else must see him thus. When the room darkens, the candles seem to grow louder, their small pops and sighs echoing like distant breathing. The doctor removes his gloves and sits for a moment beside the bed. I warned him, he says finally. The strain upon the heart, even a cough could have undone it. But he refused ease. A soldier's will in an old man's frame. You stand by the window, watching the rain distort the garden statues. Was there pain? You ask without meaning to. Nichols looks up, perhaps for a heartbeat. He answers, then nothing at all. Blank. Underscore, blank. By midday, the palace is sealed in black cloth. The news has begun to spread beyond its walls. Couriers ride through the drizzle toward St. James's, carrying sealed letters for ministers and princes. Servants pass each other in corridors without meeting eyes. In the king's bedchamber, the preparations begin. The body must be cleaned, dressed, preserved. The physician mixes camphor, spirits, and wine into a solution that smells of medicine and decay. Using long syringes of silver, he injects the fluid into the veins, pressing it along with careful hands. The skin swells slightly, then pales, then hardens to a faint sheen. This will hold him for the viewing, he murmurs. The chamberlain dictates a short announcement to the royal secretary. His Majesty expired suddenly this morning at Kensington Palace. The Prince of Wales has succeeded as King George III. No mention of toilets, of ruptures, of blood. Dignity requires omission. Blank. Underscore. Blank. By late afternoon the chapel bell tolls once slow, deep, measured. Servants freeze where they stand, listening. The sound rolls through the palace like a tide, touching every wall and every face. You return to the privy closet one last time, tasked with cleaning it. The marble floor has been scrubbed, but the faint shadow of the stain remains. Darker in the seams, you wipe again, though you know it will never fully disappear. The porcelain bowl gleams, absurdly innocent. The candle has burned down to a stub. You close the door behind you. The brass handle is cold against your palm. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Evening descends with the smell of rain-soaked earth. The physician departs to prepare his formal report for the Royal College. You linger near the gallery window, watching the reflection of candle flames in the dark glass. They flicker like tiny souls trying to escape. A servant beside you whispers, They will never tell the people how he died. You glance at her. They will know anyway. She nods. They always do. Below, in the courtyard, the guards change watch. Their boots splash through puddles as they take position beneath the dripping eaves. Beyond them, the carriage lamps of ministers arrive one by one, yellow halos in the fog. The new king, George III, will come soon to view the body. The chamberlain orders silence. Every servant kneels as the young monarch enters, tall, pale, composed. He stands at the foot of the bed, gazing at his grandfather's still face. For a long time he says nothing. When he finally speaks, his voice is barely a whisper. Let him rest. He has earned it. He turns away, leaving the chamber. The doors close behind him with the soft groan of ancient hinges. Blank. Blank. Later that night, Dr. Nichols writes by candlelight in his study. The ink pools at the edges of his letters. Fatigue has unsteadied his hand. He writes not as a court physician now, but as a man who has seen the fragility of power made flesh. The heart, upon opening, appeared greatly distended, its walls soft, and of a pale color. The aorta was burst near its origin. Death was immediate. The pericardium contained blood enough to extinguish the spark of life within moments. He stops, dips his pen again, then adds a line that will never reach official record. Thus ended George Rex, the heart of a soldier undone in solitude. He closes the book and seals it with wax. Outside his window, the rain has stopped, leaving the city washed and silent. Blank. In the palace, the candles burn low. You walk once more through the dark corridor toward the servants' quarters. The scent of soap and camphor lingers on your hands. The sound of the clock follows you, steady, merciless. You pause halfway down the hall and glance back. Through the half-open door of the king's room, a single candle still burns beside the bed, its flame unmoving. For a moment, you imagine he might still be breathing. Then the flame bends and dies. The palace exhales, and the age of George II passes into memory. The first night after the king's death is the longest the palace has ever known. Every corridor holds its breath. Curtains are drawn tight to keep out the dawn. Candles are replaced every hour. Though no one can say why, light feels like defiance. You move through the dim corridors carrying basins of water gone cold. Your reflection shivering across the surface. From behind closed doors come small sounds, a chair creaking, a muffled prayer, the scrape of a quill on parchment. It is as if the building itself is trying to remember how to live without the heartbeat it once served. In the great gallery, the portraits have been veiled. Long black cloth falls over gilded frames, turning generals and queens into shadows. Even their silence seems heavier now. Blank. Before sunrise, the chamberlain summons the household. Servants stand in 2 rows, heads bowed. The chaplain reads from the Psalms. The days of our years are 80 years and 10, and if by reason of strength they be 80. Yet is their strength labor and sorrow. At the word sorrow, a maid begins to cry. The sound ripples through the line like a thread pulled too tight. Orders follow, precise, ceremonial, stripped of feeling. The king's personal effects are to be catalogued. The windows draped in mourning cloth. All clocks within the royal apartments are to be stopped at the moment of death, 25 minutes past 7. You obey, one by one. You silence the ticking that has filled these rooms for decades. Each click of the key feels like the ending of a life. Blank. By mid-morning, the royal undertakers arrive. They wear coats of black broadcloth, faces pale beneath powdered wigs. Their boots squeak against the marble as they bow before the covered body. They speak little. One gestures to the physician's notes. Another opens a chest containing glass jars of preservative spirits. The smell changes first: camphor, brandy, myrrh. The air thickens with it. You feel it cling to your throat, sweet and sharp. The physicians lift the sheet. The king's face looks strangely peaceful now, drained of color, eyes stitched closed with fine silk. They anoint his temples with oil, brush rouge across his cheeks to restore a suggestion of life. The illusion is delicate, almost kind. You hold a candle near the table as they work. Wax drips onto your hand, but you do not flinch. In its trembling light, the dead king appears less terrifying, smaller, almost familiar. When they finish, he is dressed in white satin, the garter star pinned to his breast. Around his neck lies a ribbon of blue silk. He looks ready not for burial, but for portraiture. Blank, underscore, blank. Outside, London has begun to learn the news. The announcement is read at St. James's, then posted in the coffeehouses. His Majesty George II expired suddenly this morning at his Palace of Kensington. Nothing more, no mention of the manor, no whisper of the place. Dignity, as always, edits truth. Yet truth leaks through cracks. By afternoon, the servants' entrance is crowded with messengers bearing questions. A printer from Fleet Street offers money for details. Another man claims to be from the Royal Society, seeking confirmation of the aortic rupture. The guards send them away, but the rumor has already left the gates. Blank, underscore, blank. Inside, the palace becomes a machine of mourning. Seamstresses arrive with bolts of black crepe. Tailors measure courtiers for their garments. The hiss of shears and the rhythm of needles fill the rooms once meant for music. The royal kitchens prepare meals without flavor, broths, breads, wine diluted with water. In mourning, one cook murmurs, "We must not tempt the appetite." The king's dogs, small spaniels once adored by him, are removed to the stables. Their whines echo faintly through the courtyard until night falls. You watch the changes unfold with quiet disbelief. In a single day, the palace has shed its life like a snake's skin. Laughter, gossip, and music, all gone. Only the sound of rain remains. Blank, underscore, blank. At noon the next day, Prince George, now King George III, returns. His carriage passes through crowds standing in silence. Hats pressed to chests. Inside, the new king's face is pale, unreadable. He climbs the staircase alone. When he reaches the bedchamber, everyone kneels. He does not speak for several minutes. His eyes move over the shrouded figure, then to the portraits covered in black. Finally he says, almost gently, "Let the house rest. He has done his part." It is both a blessing and a command. When he departs, a strange calm settles. You realize that grief inside palaces is not like grief among ordinary men. It does not weep or shout. It reorganizes itself into ceremony. Blank, underscore, blank. That evening the royal tailor fits you for morning livery, black coat, dull buttons, white gloves. He warns that all servants must appear composed, no outward sorrow, no display of fear. You nod, but when he pins the hem, you notice his own hands shaking. At vespers, the chapel fills with the smell of damp wool and candle smoke. The choir sings softly, voices rising like mist, dissolving before they reach the vaulted ceiling. The chaplain's sermon speaks of duty, obedience, the fleeting nature of power. He never mentions the king by name. He does not have to. When the last note fades, the congregation remains seated, unwilling to break the silence. You feel a pressure in your chest, not sadness exactly, but the weight of shared waiting. Blank, underscore, blank. 3 days pass. Outside, the fog thickens. Inside, the preparations intensify. Drapers cover the staircases with black velvet. Footmen polish silver for the lying in state. The undertakers construct a temporary catafalque in the great hall, a raised platform where the coffin will rest beneath heavy canopy. You are assigned to assist the embalmers. Their hands move with eerie grace, as if guided by music only they can hear. They wash the body in aromatic wine, wrap it in layers of linen soaked with resin, and finally enclose it in a lead shell. The hammering of nails echoes like muted drums through the corridor. When the lid is sealed, one of them murmurs, "He will not rise again until judgment." The others nod, not as believers but as craftsmen satisfied with their work. Blank. Underscore. Blank. That night, long after the household sleeps, you return to the gallery. The candlelight barely reaches the far wall. Outside, the rain has stopped, leaving the windows fogged with the breath of the city. You pause before a veiled portrait, the king at Dettingen. Sword raised, face fierce. The cloth over it shivers slightly in a draught, as if the painted figure were trying to breathe. You lift the edge of the veil just enough to see the colors beneath. The paint glows faintly in the candlelight, red of the uniform, white of the horse's flank, gray smoke of battle. The king's eyes, caught forever in command, meet yours. You whisper, "They have silenced your clocks, Majesty." The face does not change, but you think you see the faintest curve of a smile, as though even he finds irony in death's obedience to ritual. You let the veil fall. The whisper of fabric sounds like the closing of a page. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Toward dawn, you pass the privy chamber once more. The door has been scrubbed, repainted, and sealed. Yet when you walk by, a faint scent rises, something between candle wax and metal. It lasts only a moment, but it is enough to remind you that beneath all ceremony, there remains the simple truth of flesh. You whisper a prayer you half remember from childhood, not for the king but for everyone who must live in the wake of his silence. Let the noise of power fade. Let the body rest. Let time forget kindly. Outside, the first birds call across the damp gardens. Light seeps slowly through the curtains, turning the black cloth gray. Morning again, another routine begins. And the palace, now empty of its heart, breathes on. Rain hangs over London in long gray sheets. The morning of the procession begins with bells, slow, deliberate, each toll falling into the river. You stand in the courtyard as the coffin is brought forth, mahogany beneath the royal standard. A lead shell within, gilded handles that catch and lose the weak light. 12 guards shoulder the weight. The household forms in ranks. Black cloth covers the balustrades. Black gloves hide the tremble in hands. The smell of wet wool, horse sweat sits in the cold air. A herald reads a river of titles that once could command fleets. The words vanish into mist. The gates open. The city exhales. The procession moves at the speed of grief, measured, resistant to haste. You take your place among the attendants, one of many candles in human shape, walking behind the bier. The streets are lined with faces. Men remove their hats, rain mats hair to skulls. Women press gloved fingers to mouths. Children climb sills, solemn as if sensing that ceremony is a weather no one escapes. Curtains stir in upper windows. Down here, you feel the city's pulse in hooves and wheels. At Charing Cross the wind rises. The standard darkens as drops bead and run, turning lions and harps into blurred silhouettes. A murmur passes along the crowd. Some prayer, some rumor, some need to speak to the unanswering. Each tower answers the next. At Westminster Hall the line loosens into the vast interior built for kings to be seen by those who pay for crowns. The hall is dark despite the hour. High windows give only pewter light. Black velvet falls from the hammerbeam roof like night lowered by ropes. Torches gutter. Smoke drifts to rest among oaken angels. The coffin climbs the steps and comes to rest upon the catafalque. The canopy above is heavy with fringe that stirs in currents you cannot feel. Guards take their stations, halberds lifted. The hall gathers its breath and keeps it. The doors open to the public. They come as river water does, steady, unstoppable. Veterans who remember the old king's temper and Dettingen. Shopkeepers who cursed taxes and now cross themselves. Widows who recognize the geometry of loss. They file past in the patterned silence London reserves for snow, plague, and sovereigns. You stand near the bier to steady grief that grows untidy. You rarely have to. Mourning, like music, teaches discipline. A woman trembles and bites her knuckle. A boy leaves a sprig of rosemary. An old man bows so deep you fear he will not rise. He does, with a gasp like surf retreating over stones. The air thickens. Wax, damp wool, iron, breath. The ingredients of a city compressed into a single room. Your throat roughens. Your eyes sting from smoke. Guards shift weight from foot to foot. Time frays. Night gathers. Lamps are lit. Mirrored plates throw light forward. When the last visitor leaves, the doors close with a report louder than drums. You hear rain again, polite on stone. The day of burial arrives unannounced by sun. Cloud rests upon the city like a hand. You dress in black that shines nowhere and carry a taper that refuses a steady flame. The procession reforms with the clink of fittings and the thump of wheels. A horse stumbles and recovers with an offended snort. From Westminster Hall to the Abbey is not far, but grief adds miles. You walk as if inside glass, hearing everything twice. Once in the air, once in the skull. The Abbey's west front emerges from the mist by degrees. Its towers stand like wet bone. As you pass beneath the arch, water hisses off cloaks and gathers in flagstone gutters. Inside, sound changes. The space receives it and sends it upward to be threshed by ribs of stone. Candles throw warmth against cold that does not acknowledge them. Music begins. Low voices intoning words worn smooth by centuries. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. The coffin advances along the nave. On either side, effigies of older kings lie in attitudes of sleep. Hands folded, stone eyelids refusing to open. Some have lost fingers. One has a nose chipped away. Time is a vandal more patient than any man. Henry VII's chapel waits like a jewel box at the far end. A lacework of stone so delicate you fear breath could break it. Here the air smells of incense and iron. Heralds take their places. Clergy arrange themselves in tiers. The coffin descends the steps, each tread sounding small thunder. You stand where shadow balances light. From here you can see faces for whom this is theater. Policy, inheritance, grief sits differently on every head. On some it looks borrowed, on others, native. The young king watches with a stillness learned quickly. The service moves as a tide does, forward, pause, withdraw, return. A psalm seems to breathe. A trumpet offers a single clear thread and is quiet. Names are spoken the way craftsmen speak measures. At last the ropes appear, four, thick, dark with oil. They hiss as they pay out through calloused hands. The coffin lifts a hair's breadth, then slides into the throat of the vault. Space swallows it. The sound is not loud. It is deep. Earth to earth, the archbishop's voice finds a register between iron and velvet. Ashes to ashes, a handful of soil falls and becomes a sound larger than itself. Dust to dust. He goes down to join Queen Caroline, the wife he mourned with surprising tenderness. The vault holds them without comment. When the last of the rope is gathered and boards eased back, a mason steps forward to seal what ceremony has opened. His hammer does not hurry. Each strike is a syllable in a language you feel rather than know. The choir releases a final chord and it thins to nothing. Clergy file away. Heralds fold banners. Guards stamp life back into their feet. You do not move until someone touches your shoulder. Outside, rain has gentled to a fine ash that clings rather than falls. The crowd exhaled while you were within. Now it resumes inhaling. The city returning to the labor of being itself. The bells quicken, as if time, having stood still a measure, sprints to make up what it lost. You walk to the cloister. Stones glisten. In the herb plot, rosemary and rue release smell when the rain bruises them. You crush a sprig. The scent leaps up, clean, bitter, loyal to memory. A clerk collects names for the record. You give your own in a voice that sounds like it belongs to someone else. He thanks you and writes it down, adding one more line to the world's patient book. Later, when the streets thin, you stand on a bridge and look down at the Thames. The river is full and moving. Straw spins in eddies like thoughts that refuse order. A barge passes with barrels that knock together like weak applause. Somewhere a boy laughs. Somewhere someone coughs for warmth. Life reasserts itself. You return to the palace after dark. The galleries look larger with no one in them. A single candle burns beside the door of the privy chamber, now sealed and freshly painted. The light finds the curve of brass and rests there. This is the shape of an ending. You think, not a wall, but a threshold. Behind it, arrangements finished. Before it, rooms that must learn to breathe differently. The drizzle beads on the window and joins into rivulets. When at last you lie down, you keep your eyes open until the room closes them for you. Bells continue at a distance, less insistent now. In sleep you hear them still, braided into dreams of long corridors and gentle ropes. In the morning, printers will hawk sheets declaring a nation's sorrow. Carvers will set to work on letters destined to grow shallow with fingers and centuries. Children not yet born will learn a fact shorn of everything you saw, that a king died and was buried. The rest, the rain, the smell of bruised rosemary, the weight of silence on ropes, the noise stone makes when it agrees to hold, will belong to those who were there and to the building that remembers for everyone. And history, patient as weather, will fold the day away. The weeks after the burial stretch into a hush that no proclamation can fill. The palace empties, room by room, as servants are reassigned. Courtiers drift toward the orbit of the new king, and the echo of boots on stone fades into something like memory. You remain for a time, moving through corridors that no longer know their purpose. Curtains hang open again. Air flows where incense once gathered. The scent of wax and myrrh lingers like the aftertaste of a prayer said too often. Everywhere the old king seems to have left a faint indentation, as if his presence, though gone, has weight. The desk bears the circle where his cup always stood. The window latch creaks when the wind rises at 6. The hour he used to rise. The clock in the gallery, stopped at the minute his heart burst, has not been wound since. A new rhythm builds under these small silences, the noise of replacement. Painters arrive to retouch ceilings dulled by candle smoke. Drapers remove black cloth to reveal gold once hidden. The hush of morning gives way to the low murmur of men measuring curtains, counting cost. Only the privy chamber stays locked. The key rests with the chamberlain, who carries it like a secret. Some nights you think you hear him pacing outside that door, as if he listens for something within. Blank, underscore, blank. Outside the palace, the story has already changed shape. Londoners repeat it in a dozen versions. That the king cried out before falling, that he was struck by God for pride, that he saw a ghost of Queen Caroline moments before his heart broke. One pamphlet claims his death was punishment for popish sympathies. Another insists he died laughing. In coffeehouses, men lean over cups of bitter grounds, turning anatomy into gossip. Burst a vein, they say. One begins, on the stool, mind you. Another clucks his tongue, half scandalized, half delighted. The laugh that follows is too loud, the kind used to chase away discomfort. Truth walks slower than rumor, but it endures longer. Dr. Frank Nichols, methodical even in grief, prepares a formal paper for the Philosophical Transactions, his autopsy stripped of setting, his Latin measured and cold. He describes the rupture, the pericardium, the measure of blood, but not the room, not the sound, not the way the candle flickered as he held the heart in his hands. He does not write that it was heavy, warm, and human. He does not write that it frightened him. Blank, underscore, blank. For a season, the palace belongs to workers who rebuild its image. Painters restore gilt moldings. Chandeliers are polished to a brightness that almost feels like denial. You help where you can, wiping the frames of portraits veiled during mourning. When you lift the cloth from his likeness, the king painted at 60. Defiant, sword raised, you pause. The eyes seem smaller than you remember. Later that night, you pass the empty corridor where the old king used to walk before dawn. The moonlight makes the marble floor look like frozen water. You think you see movement, a robe turning the corner, a faint shadow pausing where the privy door waits. You blink, and it is gone. Whispers begin. That his ghost walks at 6. That he still rises for his morning chocolate. That his chair creaks without touch. The staff laugh about it in daylight, but after dark no one lingers near that wing. You, who know the truth of sound and shadow, say nothing. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Across the city, George III's coronation remakes grief into celebration. Bells ring, trumpets flash, crowds cheer, yet in quiet corners, the jest lingers. Children repeat it in the streets. The king who died upon the toilet. The phrase spreads like a weed, half humor, half defiance. It is a way for the common to touch the untouchable, to imagine that beneath the crown lies something as ordinary as digestion, as vulnerable as flesh. You hear a man sing it once, set to a tavern tune. He sat on his chair. He thought no ill. But death was waiting, quiet and still. The laughter that follows is sharp, bright, cruel, but you realize there is a strange mercy in it too. To laugh at a king's death is to remind oneself that even kings are human. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Months turn to years. The palace sheds mourning entirely. New portraits appear, new servants, new habits. The privy chamber is reopened, painted over, renamed as if words could change stone. Yet sometimes, in the quiet before dawn, a draft slips from beneath the door carrying the faintest scent of wax and iron. Dr. Nichols dies not long after publishing his paper. His notes, preserved by his son, pass to the Royal College and then to libraries. They are read by physicians who never see the palace, by students who never smell the air of that morning. To them, the report is a clean study in cardiac rupture, a case without a soul. And so the story divides, one for medicine, one for memory. In medicine, he becomes a specimen. In memory, a ghost. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Decades later, you return to Kensington as an old man, walking slower, feeling the floor tremble beneath your stick. The palace has changed its skin. The colors are lighter now. The smell of beeswax replaces the scent of myrrh. Tourists, foreign and curious, stroll through rooms once forbidden, their footsteps like polite applause. You stop before a guide describing the portrait of George II. A soldier king, she says, died suddenly. A great heart, they say. She smiles at her own words, unaware of their precision. You stand silent behind the crowd. When they move on, you step closer. The paint has cracked in the years since you last saw it. Through the network of lines, his face seems older, almost tender. You whisper, they remembered you, after all. No one hears. Blank. Underscore. Blank. Time continues its work. By the next century, poets turn the story into moral. Even kings must bow to nature. Philosophers call it an emblem of mortality. In the 20th century, historians will soften the detail into euphemism. He died suddenly in his closet. Others restore the blunt truth, seeing in it a symbol of humanity's most democratic moment, death without witness, without ceremony, without choice. The marble floors outlast the gossip. The wood darkens but does not forget. When storms roll over the city, thunder sounds exactly like that morning's dull thud, a reminder the sky still remembers what stone endured. Blank. Underscore. Blank. One evening, you walk the palace gardens at dusk. The trees, pruned into obedience, hold their shape against a pale sky. The scent of damp earth rises from beneath your boots. At the far end stands the old fountain where you once paused to feed birds. You sit beside it, cane across your knees. You close your eyes and see again the morning light on marble. The candle's last flutter, the physician's trembling pen, but the image no longer tightens your chest. It drifts, weightless now, like breath leaving a window pane. You understand at last what history never says plainly, that kings do not die once. but many times. First in the body, then in the retelling, and finally, when no one remembers the sound their death made. You reach into your pocket and draw out a small medal, one you kept from the servant's chest years ago, the Dettingen ribbon. Frayed but whole, you place it on the fountain ledge and leave it there, offering it back to the air. The medal is cold in your palm before you let go. Blank. Blank. As night gathers, you walk back toward the palace one final time. Through a window you glimpse a modern clock ticking, its steady beat replacing the silence you once knew. The hands move past 7:25 without hesitation. And somewhere, behind a sealed door, the air remembers the moment it stopped. A century of laughter, rumor, scholarship, and dust has wrapped itself around that heartbeat. Yet beneath it all, the truth remains simple. A man sat down to rest, and the pulse that carried empires ceased. No crown can soften that sound, and no history, however grand, can silence it. Centuries have passed. The world has changed its face so many times that even the air around Kensington seems different. The city beyond the palace walls hums with wheels and engines instead of hooves. But the stones beneath your feet remember everything. You walk slowly now, cane tapping against the worn path, through gardens trimmed too neatly to feel alive. The air carries the faint perfume of wet grass mixed with something metallic, the smell of age itself. Ahead, the palace rises from the mist like a faded memory of power, red brick darkened by rain. Windows glinting with reflected clouds. It looks smaller than it did in your youth, and quieter, as though even the building has begun to doubt its own importance. Tourists pass by with cameras, voices soft with reverence or curiosity. You hear fragments of their speech, names, dates, kings, but the words drift away before they form meaning. History has become a language no one speaks fluently anymore. Blank. Blank. Inside, the air is warm, still, heavy with polish and preservation. The rooms gleam with the effort of remembrance. Portraits stare down from their gilded frames, their colors softened by centuries of candle smoke. One of them, George II, hangs in a gallery flooded with light from tall windows. He looks eternal in the painting, silver armor, steady gaze, one hand resting upon a sword. The illusion of power perfectly preserved. But you know how soft the body was beneath that armor. You know the tremor in the fingers that signed decrees, the sighs that escaped behind closed doors. You remember how that same hand fell lifeless to the marble floor one October morning. You step closer. The varnish catches the light like a thin film of water. Beneath it, the paint cracks in a network of fine lines, spiderwebs of time spreading across the surface. Each line is a year, a breath, a slow surrender. He has not survived so much as he has been embalmed. You wonder if memory, too, can be embalmed, kept from decay by constant repetition, at the cost of its warmth. Blank. You move onward through the palace until you reach the narrow corridor that once led to the privy chamber. It's roped off now, a simple plaque on the wall, private access, staff only. The corridor smells faintly of wax and cedar, and something else, something like old air exhaled from deep within the walls. You stand before the door. The brass handle gleams from 1,000 polishings. To the staff, it's just another relic, a curiosity for tourists who never quite notice it. But to you, it is the mouth of the story. You close your eyes and hear it again, the dull, soft thud that echoed through the corridor like a heartbeat breaking. For a moment you imagine what remains behind that door. The floor scrubbed clean, the chair removed, the silence sealed in plaster and paint. Nothing to see, nothing left. And yet, beneath the varnish of renovation, the air remembers. Because buildings do not forget. They store sound, scent, and sorrow the way trees store rings, hidden until someone cares to look closely. Blank. Later that day you walk to Westminster Abbey, cane tapping softly against the flagstones. The tourists follow their guides toward the tombs of poets and kings. You move with them, slowly, until you find what you came for. The plain marble slab marking the resting place of George II and Queen Caroline. Side by side beneath Henry VII's chapel. The stone is modest, unassuming, its letters worn shallow by centuries of feet. The tourists glance down, take a photograph, and move on. No one lingers. Few even read the name aloud. You stand before it, hand resting lightly upon the cool surface. The marble hums faintly with the vibration of the abbey organ, low notes rolling through the floor like distant thunder. You think of all that has changed, kingdoms rising, empires collapsing, machines replacing horses, voices carried through wires instead of walls. Yet here, beneath this cold slab, the bones of power rest unchanged, dust within dust. It is strange how silence becomes its own kind of immortality. You kneel slowly, fingertips tracing the faint outline of the letters, George Rex II. The grooves are shallow, almost erased. Even stone grows tired of remembering. Blank, underscore, blank. The air smells of wax, age, and faint incense. You can taste time itself on your tongue, a flavor of dust and devotion. In the distance, a choir rehearses for evensong. Their voices rise and fall like the slow breathing of the building. You close your eyes. The hymn folds over the years, smoothing their edges. For a moment, the centuries collapse, and you are again in that small, lamplit room. The candle trembling, the robe twisted, the physician bending low, the heart cooling in its silver basin. You see it clearly, every sound, every smell, every motion, yet it no longer feels macabre, only human. You whisper to the marble. They remember you wrongly, Majesty, but they do remember. Your voice echoes softly, swallowed by stone. Blank, underscore, blank. The light inside the chapel changes as the afternoon wanes. The stained glass windows turn the air into fragments of color, blue, crimson, gold, spilling across the tombs like spilled wine. Dust motes drift through the beams, suspended like souls uncertain of where to go. You think of the thousands who have stood here before you, each leaving behind a little warmth, a little breath. The marble beneath your hand has absorbed them all. And in that warmth you find something almost merciful, the proof that remembrance does not belong to kings alone. It belongs to anyone willing to stand still long enough to listen. Because when everything else is gone, the armies, the crowns, the names carved deep, what remains are the witnesses, the ones who were there, the ones who still see, the ones who remember not what was said, but what was felt. You exhale. It feels like letting go. Blank, underscore, blank. Outside the abbey, the evening sky glows with the color of pewter. Rain has begun again, soft, persistent. The city hums with its ordinary music, bells, footsteps, distant laughter. You walk toward the river, each drop tapping the brim of your hat like a clock running backward. At the bridge, you pause. The Thames moves beneath you, indifferent and eternal, carrying bits of reflection and sky toward the sea. You lean on the railing, the smell of wet iron sharp in your lungs. You think of George II's heart, how it fought, how it tore, how it stilled. You think of your own heart, beating softly against ribs that will one day quiet in the same way. And you understand. There is no tragedy in this, only truth. Time does not take life away, it returns it to silence. The silence that comes before the first cry. The silence that waits after the last breath. You look up. The abbey towers stand dark against the pale sky, their edges blurred by drizzle. They have outlived every king they crowned. They will outlive many more. You whisper, not to the dead, but to the living who pass beside you without looking. Remember quietly. Everything ends. And that is why it mattered. You turn away from the river, cane tapping in time with your steps. The sound fades among the echoes of the city until it is impossible to tell which heartbeat is yours and which belongs to history. Behind you, the abbey bells begin to ring for evening prayer. Their notes roll across the water, over the rooftops, through the fog, and somewhere, deep within the marble floor, a single vibration answers. It is small, almost nothing. But it means that the story is still alive.